Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. Welcome to this side of the gate, and tonight I have two of my favorite people, and I think you're going to really enjoy them as well. I have my sometimes present co-host, Mr. Steve Stockton, author of Strange Things in the Woods and More Strange Things in the Woods, and also my co-author of our book. Come on in here, Steve.
Hi, Cisco. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me again.
It's always fun. We always have a good time. And tonight we are going to welcome a friend of mine. Now, she is a sister podcaster. We are on many different networks together, and I just love her. And one of the things that connected me to her right away is she started her podcast right around the same time I did. And I started listening. And I listened to why she started it. And she just has this open heart to invite in people who have had experiences. And she wanted to give them a safe place to come in and talk about them and share their experiences and spread that knowledge around. I just love the idea, which is pretty much the same reason I started mine. And she's had many experiences herself, and she's also a paranormal researcher, and she is the producer and host of Paranormal Heart, Ms. Kat Ward. Come on in, Kat.
Hey, Swamp Sister, how's it going?
All right. It's so good to finally have you on. We've been on so many paranormal circles that we've talked to, round tables and things like that. It's just really nice to finally, I was on your show, and it's really nice to have you in and bring you on to our, to our show here. And just thanks for doing this.
Oh, it's an honor for me. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are welcome. I am thrilled to talk to you about just, what got you started in this. Now, did you have experiences as a young girl? Okay, what was your first experience that started to give you like, wow, what's going on, and started to make you think?
Well, first of all, I just want to apologize to the listeners that I'm just recuperating from pneumonia, so if I lose my voice or if I sound a little off, I apologize.
It's not
I'm on the right
problem.
track though, so it's been a rough go.
We're so glad you're getting better. And I'll tell you what, there's never been a problem. Steve and I can do a lot of the talking too, so don't worry about that.
I know
Never a problem for us.
Yeah. No, I grew up on the east coast of Canada in a province called New Brunswick.
Nice.
And between the ages of about 5 and maybe 12 or 13 years old, I have no siblings. My parents and I lived on the top floor of a 3-story apartment building. Now, this apartment building was really old, where before they switched over to electric heat, they actually had a coal furnace in the basement. So it's an old building.
Yeah.
Very creepy building, and it just had a really weird vibe, even when I was a kid. And, of course, the place that had the most creepiest vibes, of course, was my bedroom and my big walk-in closet. Had to be my room, right? So I can't remember the first time I saw this, but I saw what now people refer to as the Hat Man. I used to tell my parents, I have a man living in my closet. And he used to come out, and I'd wake up and I'd see, but this guy was short. I don't know if you're familiar with the Hat Man. He's normally tall, but the one that I encountered was short, about 4 feet tall. No features at all. Couldn't, he was like a shadow, and he had that brimmed hat. And I don't know if it was a trench coat or a cape that he was wearing, but he never paid any attention to me, thankfully. I would just stand there, lay there in bed with my covers over me, up to my chin, hoping to God that he was never going to notice me. And he just kind of walked around my room. I don't know what he was doing.
Wow.
And I saw him several times. And I would have lots and lots of nightmares. I'd scream for my parents. They'd come in the room. They'd turn a light on. They'd do the sweep. And nothing here. And it got to the point where we'd have a nightly ritual before tucking me into bed. We'll check the closet, check under the bed. Yep, nothing's here. But even to this day, my dad says that apartment, I used to have so many nightmares. After we moved, I never saw the Hat Man again. Never had the nightmares. There was one in particular. I used to sleep with my arms and legs hanging off the side of the bed.
Oh.
And one night, my arm was hurting, so I screamed for my parents. And when they came in, told them my arm hurt. They turned the light on, and I had scratches on my arm.
Ooh.
No idea where that came from. I don't know if it was the first and only time it ever happened. So I don't know if it had any correlation with the Hat Man or what it was, but, just freaked me out. And, I'm in my early 50s, and I still don't sleep with my limbs over the bed.
Well, who
because
does?
of that moment. Yeah.
I warn people at the end of every show, keep your feet under those covers. Yep. I mean, there's something magic about the covers. Now, that's just so odd because I don't see any reason why the Hat Man couldn't become, show himself shorter. And of course, it could have been someone who just wore a hat like a cowboy hat, or was this more like a bolero type hat? Was it, or like a cowboy hat, or it was more like a bolero? That's just
more
so
like a bolero.
Odd. Yeah, that's very, very strange. I think it's creepier that he was short and just wander around the room. What do you think, Steve? I know you know an awful lot about that.
Never had a personal experience, but I've talked to a lot of people that have, and I've written about it. I've never heard of one that was short. Usually they're very tall, very gaunt. Mm-hmm. So that's unusual. I like that aspect of it. And in regards to the scratches, do you think that correlated with the Hat Man or whatever was in your closet there?
I don't know.
How many scratches were there?
I don't recall. It was more than one, so it could have been like 2 or 3. I don't recall 100%.
I've got some interviews I've done where people have been scratched 3 times, and from what I understand from other paranormal investigators, that's a sign of demonic activity. That's a mockery of the Holy Trinity. So scary stuff there.
It absolutely can be. I've also heard, a lot of paranormal people will tell you too that, if you reach up with just your hand and you scratch somebody, usually you're going to get those 3 fingers and it's going to cause 3 scratches too. So it's hard to tell. However, when you start mixing that with a shadow figure in a hat and a cape, or a hat and a trench coat walking around your room, I mean, you can't help but put the both together. The nightmares really get me more because usually they try to get into your sleep and cause that kind of unrest and nightmarish stuff. That's something that always scares me because, gosh, if they can get into your head while you're asleep, that's scary.
I had some psychics tell me later on as an adult saying that he was actually a protector of mine, and maybe he was just wandering around the room making sure that everything was okay, and and then the scratches that one night. I don't know. The apartment building's not there anymore. They tore it down many years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I can even go back and talk to people, have you had any experiences? So I have nothing else to go on.
Isn't that just the thing? I mean, the same with mine, Kat. The first house that I had, an experience in, of course, was my Revolutionary War ghost. Mm-hmm. And I think... we've all had those. Steve has had his first experience too. It just gets you started in, gosh, I wish I could go back and try to figure out what that was. I mean, it could very well be that the Hat Man that we say is the Hat Man could have been protecting you from whatever scratching was causing the nightmares. That's just the way this subject goes. A lot of times, I was just talking to Ernie Atwell not long ago from Paranormal Inc., and the same thing we said, isn't it funny how often ghosts are misunderstood? Like I honestly believe that the one in my farmhouse, the one that always appeared to be angry, always appeared to be trying to get our attention in different ways, apporting things and all kind of stuff. I'm sure everybody that saw him in my house was scared to death, but I never got that feeling from him. You see, I always got like he was just agitated and scared. So who knows? And that's amazing. So that was the experience that kind of got you thinking, or was there another one? I mean, I know you were very young.
There's a few. I'll get to those after.
Sure.
Fast forward to a few years ago, I was listening to Justin and Eric's podcast, Paratooth Radio, and they had a guest on there talking about the Hat Man. And before that show, I hadn't really heard about the Hat Man before. Oh. So I met Justin, and I'm like, hey, I had an experience as a child. So he says, oh, wait, I'm going to show you a video. So he sends me this link to a YouTube video, and there's this guy who, when he was a child, he had the same experience with the short one, and he recreated the Hat Man that he saw. So I'm watching the video, and all of a sudden, all these childhood feelings came back, and I was terrified when I saw it. I'm thinking, holy crap, that's the guy that I saw when I was a kid, and other people have seen him. And I started doing more research, and a lot of people, like Steve said, it's usually the tall version. Apparently, from what I understand, the short version is also common, not like the tall one. So I was really excited when I found out, oh my God, somebody else has had those experiences too.
Yeah.
I've got to see that video now. I got to find out about the short one, the Hat Man Junior or Hat Man in Training or whatever it is.
Yeah, send us the link and we'll put it at the bottom of the video if you
Sure.
can find it. That would be awesome for the listeners.
Another thing I've always thought about that, whereas people that have experienced the Hat Man, it usually is in that childhood era, that magic age, like Kat said, around 5 to 12, 11, 12, right around in there. And I wonder if I saw something like that at that age, I would probably think it was malevolent, whether it was actually either benevolent or maybe even benign. If you're a little kid and there's some black thing running around in your room with a hat and a trench coat or a cape on, it's probably going to scare you. So it may be, something that's harmless or some sort of guardian or something. Whereas, though, shadow people, I think they're pure evil.
Yeah, I think so too. But now, see, I have to take the dark side on this one. The things that I've heard, now, again, no expert here, but the things that I've heard about the Hat Man usually do prey on children. Sometimes they'll follow someone throughout life. But it's usually trying to cause harm to the child. And it's usually, from what I hear, it's usually children that have that light, that I don't know whether it comes after it's drawn to the light or comes after to extinguish the light. I don't know.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of creepy too.
Yeah, it is. And it's usually will prey on, like Kat said, it'll get into your dreams or it'll sit there and talk to you and try to get you to harm yourself.
And they seem to love closets. I don't know how many stories that I've heard about Hat Man. It comes out of a closet.
I don't know what it is with closets. Closets and mirrors. I mean, what is that? And if you think about it, we're here talking about it like it's nothing. But if you're in a room by yourself, especially being a kid, and these things are happening, and they've happened to all three of us in one way or another, it's the most terrifying thing. I can't tell you countless number of people I've spoken to, Kat, I know you too, and Steve. That has got to be the one of the most terrifying thing. And that's why I started my podcast, to kind of reach out to those kids too. It's like, it's so hard these days because you have to think of psychological, is there any kind of what's going on in the home? Is there some kind of unrest in the family or the home situation? There's so many different categories that have to be touched upon as, a paranormal investigator would have to look at. It's not an easy job. That's why Steve and I have talked multiple times about, and I know Kat, you and I have too, about not just the equipment, but the people that have the extra sensory kind of gifts. Yeah. Because you need that. See, now you've had probably mediums and stuff tell you, okay, well, that person that was in your room or that entity that was in your room was a protector. Well, how do you know that they're talking about that thing? They might be getting the somebody else might have been there protecting you. And again, from him, it's such an unraveling of facts. It takes more than just, a few minutes. And I really look my heart goes out to these kids. How many times have you seen a movie or heard a story where this kid is being terrorized in his room and the parents aren't paying attention or just say, go back to sleep? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And having to live with that and the torment. And, I have my own thoughts that, a lot of that is causing a lot of drug use and people to go in the wrong path to try to find answers. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Luckily, all three of us made it through. And here we are just talking about, but not everybody does.
I have a
little support group here.
Yeah.
I have a funny part to the Hat Man, though. So my dad and I are standing in the big walk-in closet, and he's trying to show me that, everything's fine. There's nothing here. And he looks at me and says, there's nothing here at night that isn't here during the daytime. Well, me being me, I looked at him with big eyes, and I said, he's here in the daytime, too? My dad regretted telling me that.
Taking that the same way. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's like, what did I do?
Wow.
So, and then apparently I was afraid of the daylight for the longest time too.
Wow. Well, I don't know how old were you around this time?
Between the ages of 5 and 12 or 13, something like that.
Yeah.
Still pretty young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's just it. I mean, you think about kids that, like I said, going through this, and again, my heart really goes out to anybody that has happened to, because I had my mom, and my mom was somebody I could talk to. She never discounted it, but she didn't explain it fully. And I've spoken to Steve about this too. I lost her at a very young age, so I didn't get to this point with her. But she didn't call me crazy. She didn't tell me, to stop talking about it or anything like that. She believed me. She would do very much what your dad did. I really think my mom had some abilities too. Maybe didn't quite understand them or whatever. But, like with my grandmother, she was not the one who told me, your grandmother never came to you. She just said, what did she say? She was interested more in what she had to say than to tell me that I was seeing things. So that's amazing. I'm glad that your dad at least did the monster walk with you, Yeah,
my mom too, but sometimes it was both, sometimes it was one or the other. But yeah, we always had the little walkthrough. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when I was about 7 years old, we went to a place in Nova Scotia called Fort Louisbourg, an old fort. And my parents and I we have a tour guide, and we're in one of these buildings. Just the tour guide, my parents and I. And I hear footsteps coming up the hall. So I'm looking up the hall, and all of a sudden the tour guide's like, where are you going? I said, well, I hear footsteps up the hall. And there's like caution tape and everywhere, She says, no, we're the only ones in the building. I'm like, no, I hear footsteps. She says, oh, that must be our ghost. I'm like, you have a ghost? And I wanted to go explore, even at 7 years old. Yeah. And she says, no, honey, it's not safe because they're fixing up the building. And I was like, oh. So, all my life I've had stuff like that, and it never really seemed weird because of my parents too.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, I often call out to parents on this, anybody that's listening. Of course, if anybody's listening to one of our shows, they're way ahead of the game, because they're not going to do that to their kid. And then you try to talk to the teenager, whoever's going through it, and go, gosh, it's like, what do you tell them? Because you don't know. I get very concerned because I've dealt with people who have, in all different stages, like from I see dead people, that kind of realm where they're just popping up everywhere and they don't know how to stop it and they don't know how to, end it, or to people that are being tormented, by other things. And you don't know what to tell them. It's like, find a psychic fair and walk around and talk to everybody and find your ground. Do you know what I mean? Don't just dive into, getting books or tarot cards or Ouija boards or anything like that to try to figure it out for yourself. Get some guidance from a learned person, whether it be a medium or psychic or meditative Reiki, anything like that, and, man, it's just scary. I can't believe your first experience was with the Hat Man. That's like saying your first experience was with the Black-Eyed Kids.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's something that's haunted my memories my entire adult life. I don't mean haunted by, I was terrified. I always think of, what the hell was that hat man? Who was he? What was he? What was he doing? Why was he there?
Yeah.
He's never left my thoughts. He's always been there. And like I said, I never saw him after we moved from the apartment building.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I'm very glad, because a lot of times they will follow you through. And I think that's because, Kat, you grew your light. People don't realize, I know you and I do, and I know Steve does, how much your light and your own belief, your higher self and all that really has, what a powerful thing that is. And I think you've probably cultivated that throughout your life,
I think.
Yeah, and it just really backs stuff like that off. I mean, it really is the only thing that will. And
yeah, it's like a muscle. You have to work that out, and plus you have to be aware of what the negative aspects are and how to get rid of those. Sea salt, sage, cedar, things to cleanse your home of all this stuff, because just as well as you can attract light, you can attract dark too. So it's a whole learning, evolving process throughout your entire life, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because growing up, I never told my friends very, very much about things that I could sense, because they all looked at me like I was the weird kid who liked ghosts. And so I didn't talk.
Sounds familiar.
Guess what? Yeah, guess what? I'm still the weird girl that likes ghosts.
Isn't that funny?
Right
All
on.
three of us went through the same thing on that. And Steve and I have talked in the past, too, about what it was like when we were kids. You didn't have all the things that are out now. We had to go search through libraries and talk to, maybe an older person, or people in our family to get stories and ideas of what's going on. And depending on who we had to talk to, you got, of course, their version. We didn't have, I didn't have a lot of Native American elders when I was younger. I kind of got into that more later in life. And, so the guidance that I got, it was pretty eclectic. I talked to everybody from priests and clergymen, nuns, teachers, professors, coaches, neighbors, just anybody that you could get a little piece of information from. And then, you just collect all this and you just keep building your own reference file,
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Same.
we're
I
still
was
doing
all
that.
about the stories. That's where my books came from. The first two, it's just, go to visit some old folks that my parents knew, because I was a late in life baby and they were old when they had me, and all their friends were old. So I'd go, there's no kids for me to play with, be like, tell me a scary story. Have you ever seen anything weird?
Nice.
Do you know about any haunted houses? And a lot of those old people, they were just full of stories that they could tell you. Sometimes it's a little reticent, and you had to kind of talk it out of them, but everybody's got at least one story. Then people will say, oh, I don't believe in all that stuff. But there was this one time, and boom, there you go. There's your story.
So funny. Yeah.
Yep. It happens all the time. And I think all three of us, too, have a heart for it. We don't only feel for the person it's experiencing it, but we also feel, if it's a human spirit, we feel for that soul, too, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of it, we're drawn to the history of it. Say, you go to a battlefield, you go to a museum, or you go to a place that's been restored, and there's a legend. There's the legend of the bride who, lost, was left at the altar and threw herself off the building, or those kind of stories. And people would say, "Oh gosh, well, you can see her running through the lawn, through the lawn on a certain night and screaming or whatever." And everybody would be so scared. My heart would be breaking. Like, what do you mean she's still running around screaming? Who's helping her? That's my first thing. What do you mean?
I
she's
just recorded a story for my YouTube channel about almost that same exact circumstance that happened in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. The Tale of the Suicide Bride. The girl that was stood up at the altar and hung herself from the rafter of this lodge. And recently it was a restaurant that's closed right now. It changes owners pretty often. But instead of, anything like that, it was so disrespectful. They had an item on the menu. The ghost's name was Lydia, and they had Lydia's chocolate suicide for two. And I thought, how rude
Yes, yes.
that's the way you're going to
Name
commemorate
it something
somebody's
different.
death. Yeah.
That's awful. That's awful. See, I'm not digging that. I really don't. I don't know how you feel about that, Cat.
No,
I mean, I can guess, but that's the thing
It's
that gets me when you
reasons like
take.
that's why it closed down,
Yeah.
probably.
Oh, sure.
yeah.
Well, see, that's it. We've gotten desensitized in a lot of ways. If you can make money on it. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there, and I'll tell you something. The paranormal field, and a lot of people don't know this, but the paranormal field has gotten more places restored and kept open or refurbished because they didn't want a place to go to ruin.
Mhm.
And that's happened across the globe.
Oh, you can
That's
name
for sure.
dozens of them. Sloss Furnace,
Yes.
some
Oh,
of the
yeah.
prisons
Oh,
and
yep.
reformatories
Yep.
and the
Yep. Yep.
Eastern State, the mental facilities and things. So those are
Hmm.
ready for the wrecking ball. And people are like, hey, this is a
Yep.
paranormal resource here.
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
keep it open. Let's make it a historic spot. Let people pay to come in and investigate it. That'll pay for the upkeep and
Yep.
stuff. And we've still got this beautiful old architecture that, they
Yes.
just don't make stuff like that anymore.
Restored it. My sister has been involved in it's called the Al Gore Barkalow Museum. It has nothing to do with Al Gore. It's Al Gore. It's one name, but it's a museum,
Gore.
and they weren't having. She's been involved with the Historical Society for like 40 years now. And she came to me a couple of years ago and she said, is there anything else we can do? I said, well, you're not doing anything Halloween. I know some paranormal groups who would love to come in and, just investigate and then maybe give a seminar. And, you can charge people to come in to hear about the history and what they find and stuff like that. It was a more kinder, gentler way of doing it. And they got enough money to fix the roof. And I said, see? But they did it in a respectful manner. It was very lovely, the people who did it, and, people don't realize that. Now, there's another flip side of the coin, and the whole reason I brought this up, the things that make my stomach turn are the ones, the same that Amy Allen gets upset about, and people like Kim Russo, the people that might see them on television talk about it. It's like when you have a place like the Priscilla Axe Murder House, or the Lizzie Borden home, or different ones like this, and they turn them into a bed and breakfast, and you have the meal that they had the night before, and you can get your picture taken on the couch where where Mr. Borden was hacked to death, and you can go to the gift shop and you get a little axe keychains and stuff like that. That just makes my stomach just turns. People died.
Yeah.
These children are still, some of them are still trapped there. And I don't see a whole lot of people going in there. I've seen a few paranormal investigators of our ilk that go in there and try to talk to the kids or whatever. But a lot of them are just going in there just to, you know what I mean? It's just making money on it. And it just makes me sick to my stomach. I don't
And then
like
the
that.
provokers. Those
Yes.
people upset me.
Yeah.
My daughter and I were actually watching a show today. I kind of walked in half, so I don't even know what show it was. And they were provoking. They were investigating provoking. And she goes, why do they provoke? I'm like, because they're so used to seeing that on TV shows.
Yep.
And she goes, isn't that dangerous? I'm like, yeah, big time.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It's not really
you
dangerous,
don't
it's
do
rude.
that.
It's rude. Yeah. I'm not.
I
I'm
like
not in it.
Cisco's take on it. Her analogy was like, if I see somebody in a hole, I'm going to try to get them out. I'm not going to stand there and say, hey, how's it feel to be in that hole? Hey, come here, everybody, look, there's a guy in a hole. There's a guy in a hole.
Yeah.
Ha, ha, look.
Yeah.
Bet you wish you could get out of the hole.
Yeah.
No, you help them, you get them out. If they want out, you help them out. If they don't, you leave them there, but you at least give it effort.
Yeah. I stood in a dark basement for 3 hours just because I couldn't get this one lady to understand that when she crossed over, she could take her kids with her.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, it was just, it was amazing. I mean, I had to sing to these people. We had Civil War soldiers. We had, I believe there was some slaves that were on the Underground Railroad that, had gotten off of that and gotten scared. And I mean, it was just, my heart just breaks. I mean, I think if it was one of us or if it was one of our children or something like that, these are people. And, ghosts were people too. And you should help them. You know, you should help them. And I just don't get people making money on. I can see people doing ghost tours. I can see people doing a respectful thing and a history tour and things like that. But just to make money off of a murder, it just doesn't make sense to me. You know?
Me neither.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that anybody who has negative experiences with the paranormal isn't necessarily demonic. And the way that I like to explain it is, let's say you're sitting in your house and I'm coming in and I'm like, hey, how's it going? And you keep ignoring me and I'm trying to talk to you and you're not hearing me. And I'm going to get really mad and start yelling and trying to move things. And, I said, it's kind of like that with spirits, because some of them are just trying to get our attention to talk to us and we're not hearing and they're getting really frustrated. Or, what's the difference? Say I walk into your house, Cisco, and I'm like, hey, Cisco, how's it going? My name's Kat, as opposed to walking into your house saying, hey, Cisco, do you live here? And you're going to be like, whoa, what's going on? It's just keep it respectful, people.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And I can tell you something that just, scare the skin off you and you realize how deep it goes. When you're going to a home that is anything other than, human, there's some definitely human negative entities. I mean, if you were, and let's just put it this way, if you were a jerk in life, you're going to be an ass soul when you die. So, it doesn't change. It doesn't change automatically. You only start changing and healing and doing all that stuff after you cross over it. So it seems. So if you're stuck, and depending on why you're stuck, or did you decide to stay? I mean, it's all free will. Why are you hanging around? What's going on? Are you confused? First of all, do you even know that you've passed? You may not know. How are they seeing it? I thought a movie that explains what I'm about to say now. The movie itself was hard to watch, but if you watched it through and get it and go back and watch it again, it made a little more sense. But it was called The Others.
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, you should see it, because your perspective on it will be, you'll just really get it. And like I said, it was kind of hard to watch because it was the way the cinematography, the way it was laid out. But once it's over, you can kind of see why they did it that way. And now I'm going to spoil it for you. But the whole thing is, you're watching this one woman and you just think she's nuts. And she's got her kids, and just there's something going on. There's a lot of flashes and things going on. She's in this big house and all these keys for every door. Well, the thing is, she's dead. And the kids are dead. And she's reliving. She's stuck there, and she keeps reliving almost like a day over and over again. And the people in the house are hearing these ghosts and hearing her and hearing the kids, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. In fact, they've got a medium there and a Ouija board. They're trying to have a seance, and she's seeing them as the ghosts. So vice versa, back and forth.
Interesting.
It's like The Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis, where he doesn't know he's dead. Oh my God, I love that twist at the end. That's a perfect movie.
Very good. And that stuff like that, and the stories I've heard and the things I've seen, that makes me wonder. So if I'm going into a situation, or I wind up in a situation, I always try to take that perspective with me. They might very well wonder what the heck I'm doing in their house. I've been crouching on their territory. And I know you approach things a lot like that, Kat, because now, what's the name of the group that you're in, or?
It's Canadian Supernatural Research Society. So CSRS. Oh, geez. Canadian Supernatural Research Society. And we're in the Ottawa Valley in Ontario, Canada.
There you go. And I know you approach things a lot like that. You go in with care. And, I hate to keep bringing up Heart, but, that's your show, Paranormal Heart. But you put that right out there, and I love that about you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you tell us the story of the time you were investigating and something interesting happened to you that hadn't happened before, when you had a little something possibly walk through you?
Oh yeah, I knew you were going to talk about that.
I've had it happen.
We're in the Ottawa Valley, and we moved away for a few years and we came back. So this was the last investigation I did with the team before moving away. It was over at a business, and we're setting up. So my job is setting up the camera. So I got the wires, and I'm starting to set up, and all of a sudden I'm standing there and I'm like, something didn't feel right. I got that tingling on my back, which is my spidey senses, right? Mm-hmm. And Katie Turner, the lead investigator, she's amazing psychic medium. Oh my gosh, I've never met anyone so accurate in my entire life. She is truly amazing. So all of a sudden she looks at me and she says, "Are you okay?" And she sounds like she's way down at the other end of the hall. Like I can hardly hear her. And all I can do is I'm looking at her wide-eyed and I'm shaking my head. Yes. She goes, or no, I shook my head. No. She goes, something tried to go through you. And I shook my head. Yes. She goes, you need to go get your crystals and you need to get them now because I like to keep selenite on me. Mm-hmm. I dropped the wires right there and I booked it for my case. And normally, I usually have 3 pieces in my case, and I usually just keep one in my pocket. I grabbed all 3 pieces, and I'm putting up my shields, the white light and everything, and I'm praying, and I'm talking to my ancestors, my mother included, who's passed on many years ago. And I'm like, okay, I need everybody's help. And I'm talking, saying, whatever you were, if you're trying to communicate to me, that is not the way to do it. You do not touch me. You do not try and take control of me. This is what all this equipment is for, these boxes with the lights on it and everything. You will communicate to me and the team here through the equipment, not through me or any other team member. And I couldn't go downstairs. I had to sit back and watch the monitors while they investigated because I needed to use every ounce of my will to not let whatever that was in because it was persistent. Mm-hmm. And I'm not really a big person on orbs because to me, a lot of it is dust, especially if you're in old buildings. But when they took pictures and videos of me, there's orbs all around me. And I'm just like, yeah. And I had goosebumps on my arms, and I had to use every ounce of my will to say, you shall not pass. You're not coming in here. So then after the investigation was done, Katie looked at me and says, "Where did you go?" And I said, "Katie, I have no idea where." I said, "It's like something tried to push me out of my body, and you were way at the other end of the hall talking to me. I could hear you, but you were so far away." And she saw it trying to go into me, but it passed through. Uh-huh. So luckily my guardians, whatever it was, kept it at bay, and that never happened before or since. Mm-hmm. And it was, I've had some people say, "Oh, she's admitted that she's afraid and she's a paranormal investigator." I've had that, comments on the internet before. And I'm like, I don't care who you are. Every investigator is afraid, but you try to push those feelings aside and you want to find out the answers, but everyone's afraid.
Right.
Right.
And anybody who isn't is just, doesn't understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they go in it with this, because of their personality, they feel like they need to go into this without showing any kind of fear, and that's their weapon, But usually people who put a lot of that out front really have a weakness. And I'm telling you, anything that you should be afraid of is going to see through that anyway.
Yeah,
it's the ones who go in and go, "Look, I kind of understand what's going on here, and I know what my powers are. My power, my light's stronger than what you've got. And usually that's the thing. It's your faith, whatever you've got based, your light in and your protection. So that's that's amazing. And I've had that happen. Mine was a little nicer. I've had that whole. And I know Steve has too, where you get the, your hair on your arms and the back of your neck, and something's up. And I've had the spider web thing, where it feels like spider webs are being pulled off of you. That's a little bit different.
I had that one experience one time where I felt something pass through me. I've walked through cold spots and been around them and able to feel like a column of cold air and all that. But in the house I lived in Las Vegas, and it's on the story on my YouTube channel called The Haunting in Vegas. But there was a time in that house where there was something in the hallway torturing the dog. And I actually, when it released the dog, I felt it pass through me. And that was like Kat was saying, it's one of the most intense things that you've ever felt. It's just like, there's something else in here with me, just briefly. But it was like, wow, no, don't do that. I don't like that.
Yeah.
No, you do not have my permission.
Right. It's funny too because the way you describe that cat, what it what it said to me, I had some alarms going off in me. We've all heard of astral projection. We've all heard
Mhm.
that, you can meditate, and I know plenty of people that could do it. I myself, Steve has done it or has tried to do it or whatever, but I think he believes kind of like I do. It's like, you know, there's just so many things that can happen. I'd rather just stay where I'm. You know what I mean? I don't understand it enough, and I don't like to play with things I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, my grandmother
Yeah.
told me when I was a kid, and how she knew I'd been fooling with it, anybody's guess. I mean, she was self-proclaimed gypsy witch. She often knew things that I never said to her, and she would tell me what I was thinking. I'd read a book on it. I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and I'd been trying it, and I hadn't really had any success. Went to visit her, and she just out of the blue says, if you travel out of your body, anything else can travel in when you're not there, and it may not want to leave when you get back. And that scares me away from
right
astral
there.
projection forever.
Yeah, that's it right there. And it just sounded to me when Kat was describing that it was pushing her out,
Yep.
and away. And it was almost like a struggle there that you were only semi aware of, at the time because you really didn't know what was happening at the time. That's an amazing experience.
It was.
Because I've seen
Cre-
people get
Oh.
jumped. I've seen people get jumped. Right in
I
front of
know.
me that had no clue it was happening. It was like
Oh, Cisco's
instantaneous.
got a whole chapter in her book about jumpers and
Oh,
grinners
Yeah,
and
Jumpers.
I've heard her
spitters.
talk about that. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, that's just amazing to me. But in my cases, I think that they preyed on the weak, or the infirmed, or the depressed, or sad, or drunk, or in some ways, I call it cracks in your windshield.
You
And-
get that depression going on, slight inebriation. You're opening yourself up. It's just like that you lower your defenses with that, just like you would with a normal person. It would be much easier for something to take over if you didn't really know what was going on.
And I've seen it happen to really strong people too. That in their daily, very strong, very firm, affirmation type people, but they had that little crack, and somehow this certain entity or certain human ghost or whatever found it and got in, and in some cases for a while, and I often wonder how many people have done things, that are sitting there shaking their heads in jail the next day going, I have no clue. Because not all blackouts are from, alcohol or whatever. I mean, it happens. So good for you for having that fight inside of you that took over even when you didn't realize what was happening. That's amazing. It's probably what helped you with that man too.
Probably.
Yeah,
I'm a Taurus, stubborn, and when that thing tried to go through me, I was like, and I got mad, and I'm like, you are not, no, it's not happening today.
Yeah, that's just amazing. I mean, if we could figure it out, more into detail and go, this is exactly what happened. Good, because now I know what to do next time. Now I know what to do to prevent it. And I think that's part of what all this investigation and stuff is we really would love to have where is the book with all the rules in it?
Yeah. It's like Beetlejuice. After the life, then you get the book.
Right. That's it. That's just it. And, I don't know how many, I don't know how to quite put it. I hate to say dead people. I don't know how many of the dead that you have had a chance to have, like, even a short convo with. But when you get to that point where, of course, this would have to be somebody who had crossed over and came back for visitation. When you talk to them, either they're there and now they're communicating with you. A lot of times they don't want to tell you, and I don't know if there's a rule where they say we can't give you that answer. We can't give you all that. You have to wait and see. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It's like I finally got somebody I'm talking to, and you can't. What do you mean you can't tell me?
Yeah.
But that seems to be it across the board. We're just not supposed to know. It's like a big mystery book, and they're not going to let you read the last page.
Yeah, that's not right.
Well, it's true, but boy, your
I,
inquiring minds want to know.
I have to tell you about this experience we had last year when we were moving back to the Ottawa Valley. My husband and I came on, we call it a house hunting trip, and we looked at about 20 houses in 2 days because we only had a week to buy a house. And my husband trusts my instincts, and we're looking at houses, and he goes, "Any feelings?" Like, no, they're all neutral. Except this one house. We walked in, and the attic was a bedroom. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. Older house, So as soon as we got to the attic, I stopped and I got my spidey senses. And my husband looks at me and he goes, "You're picking up on something, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yep." He goes, "It's not good, is it?" I'm like, "Nope." And so we keep walking around. And after a while, I'm like, "Yeah, I can't stay up here." And he goes, "Okay, fair enough." So we go downstairs. We're looking at the rest of the house. And we go to the basement and never told our realtor, what I do or how I can sense things. And all of a sudden I looked at my husband and I'm like, "I don't know what it is. We're not to be here. I'm going outside." And he goes, "Okay, fair enough." And the realtor's just like, "Okay, let's go." Boom, we're out of here. There was something, when we first walked in, it was fine, but it's like I woke something up.
Yeah.
It was there, and it was not to be, it didn't like me, and I quite frankly didn't like whatever it was. And every time we drove by that house, I'm like, "F you, whatever you were, F you." It's just like, I don't know what the hell.
I've done that in pictures before, looking at real estate listings and be like, "No way, I would not live in that house." There's just something there that I can see just looking at a picture of it that there's, no, something's off.
Well, I was showing Katie one day, Katie Turner. I said, "Here, I didn't tell her anything. I just said, 'Hey, what do you get about this house?' And she just like, 'Nope.'" And I'm like, "What? Why? What are you getting?" And she goes, "That's not a good house." I'm like, "No, it's not." And I told her my experience, and she's like, "Yeah," she could pick right up on it too, looking at the picture.
Isn't that amazing? And I've joked about this before. I said, wouldn't it save so much time if before people bought a house, they took their medium with them? Because, walk this house with me. If you don't have the sense for yourself, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that have happened. Being Native American, I can tell you the countless number of places I've gone. There was a place, and I've told Steve this story. My son was very young, my youngest, and I guess he was, I'm going to say maybe between 7 and 10. And there was this long stretch of road through the country, and it was all new road because a lot of farms had sold out. And then, like when a farmer dies, people don't think about this, but if you have a couple kids, they don't want anything to do with the farm. So when that person dies, they're not taking it over like they used to back in the day. They just split it up. And it's prime, territory. So they start building condos and developments and things like that. So we had a lot of that happening where we were living. So we're going through this, and there was this heavy, just like somebody threw that a big heavy weight on your chest when you would drive through it. And I would try to drive through it really fast and just hold my breath and just put all this protection around me and the car and everything else. And this one time, we had done this for, I'm going to say 6 months or so since we lived out there. And my son just looked at me and goes, "Oh, gosh, we're going by the road with no heart." And I said, "What did you say?" He said, "This road has no heart, Mom. Somebody killed the soul, and something happened here." And I just looked at him, and it was that moment as a mom where I look up, "You have it too."
Yeah.
But he described the same thing to me. And I never said anything to my kids because I didn't want them to be scared. But I don't know what happened there, a massacre. It had to be something huge. It just was just so cumbersome, and it lasted for such a long time. So any time like that, we have a place out here that there's a store and it's a big store, like a supermarket size. And no matter what goes in there, it doesn't last long. And when it was, I guess, a Kmart or something, my husband went to go buy it. I guess he wanted to buy some pants. And it was the first time I'd ever been there. And he pulls in the parking lot, and I feel a little funny. And I open the door, and I put my foot out on the blacktop to get out of the car. And the minute my foot hit that blacktop, I said, I can't go in here. I can't go in here. He said, "What do you mean?" And my husband's like yours. He goes, all right, what do you mean? What's going on? He starts looking around. And I said,
Yeah.
I'm not going in there. I said, something bad happened here, something bad. I'm just not. And he said, can I go in? And I'm like, it's, it's up to you. He said, well, what's going to happen if I'm like, I can't tell you that, but I tell you, I'm not going. He went in so fast. I don't even know if he bought the right size pants.
Yeah,
He
you
went in and
pick up
came
on
out so
things like
fast.
that. You get that discernment.
Yeah.
I talked about in
awful.
one of my books. There was a house we used to drive by when I was a kid on my way to my grandmother's, where a kid had some years prior had chased a ball out into the street and got killed by a car.
Oh.
And I could feel that spot. I mean, I could be laying down in the back seat reading a comic book, and I knew when we drive by there. And one night we get to my grandmother's, and I had never said a word to anybody about it. And she's like, she took me in her quilting room. She's like, you feel things. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like that spot on the highway on the way here tonight. And I was just like, yeah, because you could read my mind.
Yeah.
And then my parents had a vacation property older in life when they were retirement age over in Crossville, Tennessee. And we used to go over there every fall for a few weeks. And I can remember there was this one house that drove by it for years, and I would always get just the weirdest, creepiest, like spider senses, like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And I finally started asking around and found out some guy had murdered his wife and 2 kids in the house, like back in the 1950s or something. Oh, but just driving by on the street, the house was set back off the roadways. I could feel that just in waves coming off that house. Mm-hmm. And you learn to listen to that if you're like we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't push it. You don't push it, or you and it's so hard to describe to people. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I don't know how much you've gone out walking around in the woods, Kat. Nature walks and things like that. Mm-hmm. But have you ever been in the woods and everything just went real quiet, real quick?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What the hell is that?
Yeah. And I saw you had a poll on your, I hadn't been on social media much the past couple of weeks, but I did pull in today real quick, and I happened to see you had a poll, and you were asking your listeners, what would you like to talk about? What would you like to hear more on the show? And cryptids was pretty big. And I didn't know how many experiences you had personally with anything that would come under the heading of cryptids, Kat.
I really haven't had any.
Okay.
I've had a fascination with loup-garou, which is, it's like a werewolf, but instead of shifting into bipedal, it shifts into a wolf.
Wow.
Just something that's well known in French Canadian history here, and it's always fascinated me. But I've never had experiences with any cryptids. Even I don't know if you've ever heard of Ogopogo, out in British Columbia. It's kind of
it's like a lake monster, sea monster, something. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's like Nessie.
Okay.
But it's in BC, and I remember visiting my grandparents many years ago, and my grandfather was he loved fishing, so I went fishing with my grandparents. And then while we're on the lake, like, yeah, this is where Ogopogo is. I'm like, Ogopogo? I'm like, yeah, and they told me about it, and I'm like, and we're on his home. But I was fascinated. I kind of wanted to see it. Yeah. I'm looking, I'm trying to see if I can. I never did see anything, but yeah, apparently the local natives there, they have this legend of Ogopogo in the lake.
Wow.
So, but I've never experienced it, but it's very fascinating.
I can imagine there in Canada, you have an awful lot of, you have a lot of my people not very far from you. Lenape lives, kind of close. A lot of us left and went to Canada when all the forced marching and things were going on. And I can just imagine, just hearing the names sound very Native American to me. Native Canadian, actually, now. But, Indigenous, yeah. That's amazing. The shape-shifting. One sounds very much like we have a lot of going on over here where Steve and I have talked about this too. Is I don't know what happened to Wolfman was very prominent when we were kids. It was all over the place, and then somehow it shifted to Dogman, or maybe not. Yeah. Maybe it's two separate things there. We're not real sure, but There's certain ones. Steve and I did one called. If you haven't listened to it, you need to pull it up and listen to it. I think you would love it, Kat. It was a two-parter, and it was monsters. Remember, Steve?
Yep. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, and
I haven't done that one yet.
Oh gosh, you should hear it. It's just fun all the way through, and we're talking about monsters that quite possibly could be true. And I think we settled on Wolfman, Dogman, shapeshifters.
Spring Heels Jack. We actually added some that aren't really quite monster creature types, but monster people types.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm definitely, being in my heritage, I have sat around the powwow circle, the fire, more than once, and had people asking, when you start getting into the wee hours of the morning, you're still out there talking. It's like, okay, tell me, what's going on? Is there this or is there that? And you get a lot of answers that way. And every time they got to anything like that, the elder would look at somebody and tell them, look, we don't talk about that because when you talk about that, they can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
So Kat and I were talking today. I'd put up a story about a thing that I saw when I was a kid, the Beast of Swanson Lane. Yeah. And somebody emailed me after hearing that story on YouTube and said, oh, that's a Wendigo or maybe a little guru. And I started thinking about that. And I was telling Kat, once I started connecting the dots, it kind of makes sense. That's kind of what it looked like. A Wendigo looks like a gaunt, starved deer almost. This is kind of what that looked like. I thought it looked more like a horse. I didn't see any antlers, but it was inside a shack peeking out at me and my friend. And the friend's father was also Native. He was a full-blooded Native American. I don't know what tribe he was from. He went down to investigate it, took a shotgun. When he came back, he looked off. He never would admit to having seen anything. But a couple days later, he pulled the shack down into the shell pit where we'd been in with the tractor and burned it to the ground. And that just kind of made sense. Okay. And he refused to talk about it. So that kind of goes along with the legend of the Wendigo, which that's in her area. That's the Algonquins and the Ojibwe. But I don't know. I suppose that if they have it there, they could have it, somewhere other than the north and the plains and maybe in the south. I assume my friend's father was Cherokee because that's what most people, Native Americans, were in that area, but you never know.
There's so many things that are out there. It's like that old saying, there's more things in heaven and earth than dreamt in our philosophy. Yeah. There's just so many. And I mean, I've seen things I cannot explain, especially in, the state of Alabama. It was very rural Alabama into rural Tennessee, right there on that border. And the different creatures that I saw, I can't explain it. And
the one that your mom ran over. Oh my gosh. I was thinking about that story today. I knew people almost exact same thing in the same area. It was somewhere between Scottsboro, Alabama, and Knoxville, Tennessee, where they ran over some weird thing in the road. And I even remarked in Cisco's book that wouldn't it be weird if something, crossed dimensions of time and space and ended up being, it appears right in front of a car and then gets run over.
Yeah.
And then I conjectured, is there some sort of cleanup team, how like the county comes around and collects dead animals? Maybe there's something that comes along and collects dead cryptids, and that's why you never find a Bigfoot's body.
Kind of reminds me of the movie Langoliers. I think it is.
Langoliers.
Yeah.
Langoliers, yeah.
Yeah. They come in there eating. Oh, yeah. That was that's a different one. That's for sure. The book was great. It's so hard to take a Stephen King's mind and put it into a movie off the book.
Because I know.
It's
so much.
Yeah, it's very difficult because I think his writings depend a lot on the reader's imagination as well. So that's
and he's said that as much as like I show you the shape under the sheet, but I don't lift back the sheet. That's for you to do in your mind because you'll conjure up something 12 times scarier than what I could show you.
Yeah.
Cheapers.
I've been reading him since I was 12 years old. Stuff. Yeah. So I was 12 years old, and I always, the way he used to write, there would always be a new book in the summer. So you would wait for that book to come out and try to go grab the paperback. It was just, he's been a constant through my life as far as that. I mean, I know he's written a lot of other books too that, I wasn't quite The Dark Tower, a lot of people got into. I kept trying. I would curse him. I'm like, Steven, I'm not understanding, man. I've done, you know, but the ones where he did like The Shining and so many others, A Pet Cemetery and things like that. And some of my favorites were ones that he wrote that had more to do with the human horrors, like The Body, which turned into Stand By Me,
Love that.
and
The Shining.
Shawshank Redemption. I mean, that was Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption. That was a small short story in a book of novellas or that he wrote. And I mean, that was the breakdown of the human condition in prison and, trying to get out and be free. It's amazing, amazing. But in our own minds, when we're going through stuff like this and, seeing something that our mind just isn't computing, like seeing an animal that's like maybe got 3 or 4 parts. I mean, I was sitting here remembering when I was young, I saw a woman go into a small shack. Like, we used to go into this place as kids. It was a very short time I lived there, and it was abandoned. So you'd go and you'd mess around, and Steve and I have always joked that, there's always a stack of Playboy books and some other stuff that you find in places like this. But there was just
I've got a theory about that, too.
Yeah. You were rummaging around, and, we had an old greenhouse that we used to go in, and there was an old mattress and a stack of Playboy books in there. It was just weird. And it rained on and all kinds of stuff. But when you're kids, you're going exploring. Well, there was this one shack, and I was going there to meet some kids, and this woman goes into this this shack, and she's just an old woman just dressed for outdoors. No, nothing scary. And I got scared because I thought, oh my gosh, somebody lives there. That's what scared me, because I thought, my gosh, we'd been in there rummaging around. But I thought, how could anybody live there? Well, she goes in, and I mean, it's no more than you would keep shovels in a shed in your backyard. No bigger than this. She goes in, and I'm waiting in like the woods because I'm waiting for my friends to come. And the door opens again, and a fox comes out and takes off and goes in the woods. And I'm not thinking anything of it, and I'm waiting for my friends to get there. And one of the girls I was meeting, she shows up. I said, this can't be our clubhouse or whatever it was that we were doing. I said, somebody lives here. And she says, well, there's nobody there. And, they're not listening. She's not listening. And 2 more come up, and we start all talking about the same thing. Well, they go in. There's nobody in there. Now, what was that? Do you see what I'm saying? She goes in. There's no way to come back out again unless she, climbed out a cracked board or something. And a fox comes out. So was that a shapeshifter? Was that, but when you're a kid and you see things like this, you don't put it together till 30 years later,
Yeah.
So I have no way of telling you, if that was, until I started getting into the whole Native American thing. There was a movie, forget the name of it now. I think Val Kilmer was in it, and he's like half Native, and his dad was a FBI agent or something, and his mom was Native, and he always like pushed away the indigenous part of that. Was it Thunderfoot or something? Anyway, that was.
I remember what it's.
Yeah, did you see it?
Yep.
And the guy he was after kept turning into a dog.
Yeah.
That's kind of what.
I vaguely remember it, but yeah.
This is as a shapeshifter. And this is when I started thinking about, was that lady turned into the fox? I mean, but we'll never know. That's crazy. It just seems so crazy. Yeah. And Steve, I don't know. Stuff coming out of a portal and then landing is so possible. How many people have heard about the, what's that ranch, Steve?
Skinwalker Ranch or the Sittin Ranch?
Yeah, the Skinwalker Ranch. I have read some things about that just recently that just, I had no idea the in-depth on that, where they're seeing portals and bear-like creatures coming out of the portals, and then the portal thing just closes up and the bear creature walks on like nobody's there. What is that?
And then there's another place in Washington State, not too far across the border from here, called the Sittin Ranch, and they have UFOs. They've seen Dogman. They've seen Bigfoot. Just all kinds of things. There's some kind of portal or vortex or something there, apparently.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's just so much.
Fascinates me the most about paranormal. It doesn't matter on the nationality, religion, culture, whatever. Everybody has some kind of a story related to the paranormal, whether it's ghosts or cryptids or whatever. But everybody has one.
Absolutely true. And I can just imagine. I've never been to Canada. I would love to go. I can imagine some of the vast open areas you have there, and just I'd love to go walk around and just explore, but it man, I'll tell you, I don't know if I have the heart for it anymore, because everywhere I go something happens. I mean, when I went out into the woods, a lot of people, I feel very differently than a lot of people do. I think about Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever you want to call them. I think all around the world they have a different name for them, but I think it's the same type. I always felt so sorry for them, and I've talked to friends like Brian Bowden, the friend of ours, and stuff like that, and he'll go, "Oh no, Cisco, you don't understand. If you go out in the woods and you used to feel that, you wouldn't, it would be fear you would feel. You're not gonna." Yeah. And I said, Brian, I've been out there, and I know that they've been close. And I honestly, this is going to sound really crazy, I honestly think that one warned me to stop my kids who were walking way ahead of me on a trail, to maybe stop and grab them and leave. And I found out after that there was a 120-foot sinkhole that was on that trail that they probably, at least one, if not both of them, would have probably fallen in if we had continued to walk there.
Wow.
That's amazing.
And I mean, it sounds just lunatic. It sounds crazy. But we got that feeling. I got that stop. Don't go forward. Everything got quiet, to the point of, as a mom, you want to grab your kids and get them close because something's going to happen. And that's what I did. I said, kids, stop whatever you're doing. I yelled, scared them to death. Come here now. Oh, Mom, what about, shut up and get over here, And I said, we're not going down this trail anymore. Oh, but we could go. Just, it's not happening. We're going to go back this way. And when we went back down, there's like a little shack that you can like donate, if you want to donate when you get to your car. And I asked the guy, I said, we went on, the trails are colors. There's a red trail, orange trail, yellow trail, whatever. And I told him, and just in talking, I said, well, we were going down. He said, what trail were you going down? He said, oh gosh, he said, you didn't see the sign. I'm like, what sign? And that's when I found out. Wow. He said, right around the bend. He said, we had that marked up. I said, there's no sign there. You better go put it back up. So was that something? Or was it just my intuition? We'll never know. But something happened there. Yeah. And I would say the only reason I say Bigfoot is because I saw one in Alabama. And I think if it was a Bigfoot, it was a young one. And I got the same feeling before I approached, the car went by it, that I got when I was in those woods. I can only base it on feeling. And I think that's what a lot of this paranormal stuff is too. A lot of this is based on our feelings. Yeah. And I think for years now, when the paranormal shows started to come out, they said, we're going to base all this on science. We're going to take the feeling out of it. And I think that's a mistake. How do you feel about that?
You need to have both.
Yes.
Yeah, it's got to be a balance there. And I've had the same experience with Bigfoot. I've never seen one, but I've heard them. I've sensed their presence. I've smelled them, the tree knocks and the whoops and the yelps. And then I've been pelted with rocks. And it wasn't like, it was weird, but like the rocks were just even though they flew in a straight line instead of an arc, when they hit me, I didn't even feel it. I only knew I was being hit with rocks because I saw them hit the ground. It was like it was warning me away from something, whether, and I think maybe they're like people, there are some that are nice and benign and helpful, and some of them are maybe sketchy, and you don't want to go in their part of the woods, because they'll beat you up and take your stuff. You never know.
September of 2017, I think it was. We're still living in Alberta, and the family we thought, well, we've never been to Jasper. Let's take a couple of days and we'll go to Jasper National Park. I can't remember the name of the community that we were driving through, but lots of wooded areas. And I remember looking on my phone about Bigfoot sightings in the area, and it mentioned about this one. I can't remember the name of the town that there was a Bigfoot sighting just the year prior, I think it was. And all of a sudden, my daughter goes, we're driving on the highway, and she goes, is that a horse? And on the tree line, I've driven a lot on the highway. I've never seen this happen before. There was a dead horse right on the tree line next to the highway. And I didn't get a good look at it. My daughter did. She says the whole hind quarter looked like it was just shredded. She goes, what can do that? Whatever it was, looks like it was big. And I look at the sign. Was it not the same location that there was a Bigfoot sighting that I just finished reading about? And I couldn't find anything about that poor horse. I don't know. I don't think it got hit by a car. I have no idea what it was. And I don't know if you know who William Jevning is.
Sounds familiar.
He's for about 40 years, he's researched Bigfoot. He's had encounters himself. So I've been in contact with him over the past few years. And I emailed him and I said, hey, Will, this is what we saw on the way to Jasper. I told him the name of the community and everything. I said, I can't find anything about this horse. I don't know, maybe you can dig around and see if you can find if there was any Bigfoot sightings at this particular date. He never got back to me, so I don't think he found anything either, but I've always wondered what the heck, what happened to that poor horse? It was really weird.
And then historically, one of the first recorded sightings of Sasquatch or Bigfoot in Canada, in that part of Canada, was in 1811 near what's now Jasper, Alberta. So there's obviously something there.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, yeah, there's all kinds of sightings in Jasper, apparently, from what I've been reading. It's just amazing.
Brian told me a couple weeks ago, Brian Bowden from Inside the Goblin Universe. He's
Uncle Bowden?
he's huge in the whole, Bigfoot and everything. And he told me that I'm actually living in one of the most populated places for Bigfoot. And I thought, well, I'm right here. I'm on the Jersey Shore. And of course, the next, if you go west from, where I am, you go through Jersey and a lot of farmland, and then it turns into Pennsylvania. And of course, there's lots of farmland and stuff in Pennsylvania and towns, very populated. And then you go up and you start getting into what, like say the Poconos and around that area, and like Jersey City and New York. And people don't realize, you hear New York, and if you're not from here or around here and you're in a different part of the world, you don't realize, you hear New York City and you think everything is like New York City. Well, no, that's a very, 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 very small part of New York. Most of New York State is very rural, the mountains and everything and farmland and things. I can see it being possible, but it's always a shock to hear it, because you think, okay, where are they? It's like, it's amazing how hidden they can stay after we've overpopulated so many areas, and I maybe that's why I feel kind of sorry for them more than anything else, because of my Native American heritage. We certainly got pushed off and pushed away and moved, and I feel like that's happened to them too. And I also carry with me a little bit from what I was taught. I was always taught from the Native American side of their spiritual, very spiritual things. And I don't mean spiritual in a good way, but maybe more like powers, spiritual powers. So, you know, I mean, I don't know where I set on it. You know, I mean, I can almost guarantee you that if I saw one in my backyard, I'd make him a sandwich. You know, it's just like, just because, you know, why not? You know?
Would.
Yeah, I guarantee, I think I would. I really think I would. It's like, look, you know, let's coexist here. Everything's cool. You know, it's like, I'm not here
Yeah.
to bother you. Don't, you know, bother me. Hey, you want a sandwich? But
Yeah.
but that's how I get. That's pretty much how I treat everybody, and usually I get treated well, except for today. I This is going to sound so strange, it's so far off, but I got to share it with you. I have bird feeders and all this other stuff outside every window because it's for me, it's for the cats, it's for the birds, and of course the squirrels. And I always make squirrels. You know, I do peanut butter toast and do peanuts and all.
I'm telling me. So,
I'm so weird. But it's fun to watch, and I don't ever get bothered by raccoons or get my garbage cans knocked over. Or nothing bothers me because everybody gets fed and everybody's chill, you know? Except today, I had this one little woolly squirrel, and we're sitting, and my cat's on his cat thing, and I'm just chilling, and I was reading something, and I'm looking at him, go, gosh, look at the cardinals, look at the birds, everything's so pretty, and the birds are singing, it's just a nice morning. And all of a sudden, this squirrel climbs up the tree, and he grabs. I put out some blueberry muffins that were, you know, that were going north, and I put some blueberry muffins out there. And he grabs him a half a blueberry muffin, and he goes down the tree, and he climbs up the house, and he gets on the ledge, and he looks in at the cat, and you know, I'm assuming he's seeing the cat because he looks right at him. He drops the muffin, he climbs up the screen, and pisses on my window.
wait.
And then he leaves. He takes the muffin and he goes. And I'm like, what was that? You know?
Wow.
I
That's
have
funny.
never, ever, ever, ever seen that before. Yeah. Peed
I
right
had
on my
an ex-
window.
I had an experience with a squirrel like 20 years ago. It was really weird. My husband and I were first married, and he was at work, and I'm sitting in the living room, and I'm looking outside, and I see this squirrel. Well, he's looking at me as he's eating a bird.
Oh.
I have never heard of squirrels eating meat.
Never.
And he's just looking at me, and I swear he's glaring at me going, you know, just eating that bird, and it was disturbing. So I had to call the government, like the of natural resources, and I said, okay, I don't know if this is a sick squirrel and you need to come take care of it, like maybe it's got rabies or something.
Wow.
I said, but I've never heard of the like. And he said, oh no, that's not unusual. Squirrels are opportunists. They'll eat whatever they can find. So it was probably already dead, the bird, and he just thought, oh, okay, here's some lunch.
Wow.
I said, yeah, but he was looking at me while I was eating the bird.
That's creepy.
It was creepy.
You're next.
Yeah,
That's
right.
creepy. I mean, I promise you, I've never had anything, you know, I mean, I've got a raven in my backyard that talks, you know, to me.
Nice.
Just brings all this,
Mhm.
yeah. He's dating a crow, which is, we don't talk about it, but, my husband will look at it and goes, I proved to him it was a raven, you know, and,
Yeah.
I guess they had, babies together. They had one because he brought him kind of to my yard. It was real hot. It was, oh gosh, it was June or July. I can't remember. It was last year. But he brings him to me, and he kind of, because I put food out there. And this little guy let me get next to him and let me bring him water and stuff like that. I guess he was trying to teach him to eat and gather food and stuff like that. But that raven just sat right there, and he was just, everything was cool. So, I mean, like, a lot of stuff like that happens there, but I've never had a squirrel do that before. And I thought, well, maybe it was the cat. You know, maybe he was just like, you know, his territory or something around the cat. It's like, this is my blueberry muffin. You know,
And you're not getting any.
you're not getting any. I don't know. It was just so funny. It's just so
Funny.
Yeah, pretty trippy. But see, that's just it. You know, I brought up nature because, quite honestly, any of these things that are out there are part of that, you know. And Steve and I have talked about it too. It's very scary when you don't understand and we don't know. That's all this subject. You know, we're only afraid of what we don't understand. And some things we're more afraid once we understand because there's stuff out there you should be afraid of.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
isn't that true? And But as far as the nature stuff, I think I've always felt real sorry for. And Chupacabra's one I've never quite understood, because it seems to me
Mm.
that when my oh gosh, I'm gonna say 20 years ago, Chupacabra was this thing that kind of looked like it had like this spiked mohawk, and it kind of had
Yeah.
like more of a human-like body. It was goat
Hmm.
sucker, mostly in Puerto Rico. It came through and around, and I remember seeing a film of some school kids that had one pinned against a fence, and they were throwing rocks at it, and I'm thinking, God, that's awful.
Jeez. Yeah.
And now it seems like they're saying a chupacabra is more of this dog-shaped thing that looks like it has a real bad case of mange. So I don't
Yeah.
understand how this keeps morphing and changing.
Yeah.
You know, um, like Loch Ness Monster was always Nessie. It was always, that brontosaurus kind of looking thing that you only saw glimpses of.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's changed a little bit too. Now it's got like a real. I saw something that was more like a dragon-like thing, and I'm like, that's not the one I remember. So, is this
Really? I hadn't heard
us?
that.
Are they changing, or is it us and our perceptions changing, and then just more and more of ourselves being put in this whole lore thing? I don't know
Mm.
what's going on there.
That's interesting.
Did you see? Have you guys seen that too? How chupacabras changed?
Yes, I
Yeah,
have. I
I've
was
heard
actually
about that.
looking at
Now
a
it looks like a
picture.
mangy coyote or something. I'm like, no, that's not chupacabra.
Yeah. I was actually looking at a picture of what we know of what the creature is, with the spikes and all that, and looking at it going, I wonder when that changed, because that's not what people say it looks like now.
Exactly. There's something up with that. I don't quite have my finger on it. I don't know. Of course, it's not my forte either. I mean, I've seen some strange stuff. Some of the
Mm.
things I've
Maybe that's
seen,
another Mandela effect.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
it could. Wow. See, that's
That's
another concept.
interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. Kat, you've heard my the pig thing that we saw, me and my mom. It was a shape shifting kind of pig boar
Yes.
goat
Yeah.
thing. Well, when Steve said that about something coming out of like almost like a portal and landing in a certain spot, like it doesn't know where it is either. It's like it's shocked. That
Yeah.
made a lot of sense to me, because that's kind of what it looked like it did. And maybe it went back through something. I don't know. Um, and when it changed and just all these things like its face, that's what I saw. I don't know if its body was changing too, because I was focused on its face. But it just seemed to me like it was trying to blink its way out. It's like it was panicked. It wasn't changing. I don't think it was changing to scare us. I think it was trying to get back in that frequency or whatever it is it's got to get in to blink back out again or something. I don't know. But yeah, that's a wild concept, in and out of portals, because we know they're around.
Yep.
We've heard plenty of it. There's a lot of studies being Barry Fitzgerald. If anybody is interested in this subject, I highly recommend looking into what Barry Fitzgerald has been doing for the past couple years. He is, if you're familiar with the name, he was on Ghost Hunters International, and he has now gone back to Ireland, and he has been studying a lot of things there. He has got fascinating works on, to the point of finding a portal and like being able to put your hand in it and pull it back out.
Wow.
That kind of stuff. Water, what would they be called? Water nymphs? Is that it, Steve?
Water
Yeah,
nymphs,
there's
sprites.
sprites. There's like the dryad, which
Yeah.
is, or that's the
Which
oak
ones are
tree
the
spirit.
bad
Naiad.
ones?
Naiad is the one I was told that I had an experience with.
Yeah. Which are the ones that like say like the Lady of the Lake kind of thing, where they actually they're going to drown you. They're going to pull you in. There's a
Kind of wish
specific-
Ryan Murphy was here right now. He'd
Yeah.
be able to tell us.
Well, see, those are the ones that he had an experience with. As far as you're in a canoe and you go out there, and all of a sudden you're just pulled down. There's so many amazing things out there. From fairies, and here we are. We're almost at, St. Patrick's Day. and everybody starts thinking about leprechauns and things like that. And we always think of those cute little leprechauns with the little the little thing full of gold and all that stuff.
Yep.
They're not supposedly, they're not that nice.
No.
They're little
Nope.
tricksters, almost like a djinn kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's so many wonderful and really scary things in this, and it's just fascinating.
Is
I don't have to see them. I know that the stuff is out there, and I'm so very glad that you got through that whole Hat Man thing. I wanted to tell you this. I didn't want to tell you when you were telling the story because it is a little freaky, but somebody that I've read a lot up on, because when the whole ghost hunter thing came out, gosh, how many years ago now, when they first got started, the whole TAPS thing, Grant Wilson wrote not Grant, the other one, Jason Hawes.
Jason, yeah.
Yep, he's got a few kids, and before he got into the whole TAPS thing, his investigation was pretty much solely on the Hat Man. And he had a map in his office up on the wall, and he would put tacks in all the different Hat Man episodes that he was able to investigate and find out about and heard about times, and what kid. And it was mostly kids. It was all around the world, and it absolutely, in his words, said it drove him nuts, because he could not figure out why a kid in Chicago was seeing him at the same time a kid over here was in New York or whatever.
Yeah.
And he started really investigating it, and I think before he's done, he's probably going to do something on this, because it really seems to be something, like I said in the beginning, that really just wants you to do yourself in, and kind of like another notch on his belt kind of thing. And I think it's really cool that you shared that experience with us, because of the way, without even knowing it, I wholly believe that you got through that just for the pure light of your heart and your persona and who you are, Kat.
Thank you.
And you don't realize that when you're a kid who you are, and we go through all these things in life. And I think that you still always come back around to that, the things that you try to do, the way you care for people, the things you're trying to do with your podcast. And I just really admire you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any story you would like to share with us before you must be exhausted, and I know you're coming from being sick, and I appreciate you spending this time. Is there any story you would like to share with our listeners tonight that just really either changed your mind or reinforced a belief that you had, or whether it's yours or one from a guest that you might have had, that just made you think of things in a different way, or kind of maybe even shook your thoughts up a little bit?
Not really. The experiences that I've had all my life always seemed normal, if that's not weird to say. Like I said, growing up, kids would say, that's the weird kid that likes ghosts and stuff like that. And to me, it was just normal. So I don't know, when people
like,
Yeah. Now it used to bother me as a kid, but now I'd be like, and sure, you've had an experience. Tell me about it, because I know you will. But
it's wonderful to be in and be able to talk to people. It's just that's the thing. It's just like, wow, and you listen to a story and you think, all right, it sounds to me, let me back up a minute. It sounds to me that's possibly this, what do you know about this person? That kind of thing. I've got one I think might do it for you. If Steve will grace us with a story, you wouldn't mind telling us a story, would you, Steve?
Not at all.
Okay, I've got one that I'd love Kat to hear, because I'd love to get her perspective on it. And it's the one, do you remember the boy in the window, Steve?
Boy in the window.
The boy in the window. there was a gentleman who came to a house, and he was asked if he ever saw.
Oh, yeah. I'm
Okay.
sorry, the window part threw me off.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it was
Listen to this
a
one.
guy that he went back to visit his childhood home, and I hope I'm remembering the right story.
You are.
And he showed the guy a picture like, this is me in this house, in the front yard when I was like 5 years old or whatever. And the guy's like, oh my gosh, that's the kid that I see in the house sometimes. He's like, it's like a ghost or a spirit or whatever. I'll see it run into the bedroom and then there's nobody there, or I'll see it run around the corner of the house. And it turns out it was like the guy's doppelganger of him as a kid, but in the present day time, haunting the house where he grew up in. I've never heard of anything like that before. It's kind of a cross platform thing there, because you've got a doppelganger, you've got a ghost of somebody that's still alive, but in a form that doesn't exist and hasn't existed in 40 or 50 years. So is that like a residual haunting, or what is that? That's a really mystifying one.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, I'm thinking residual haunting, and we all know emotions can leave a psychic imprint. So perhaps there was something the child at the time maybe was extremely happy.
Yeah, and that's what he went on to say. He was so happy there as a child, and just idyllic, wherever it was that he grew up, and he loved it so much that he was just absolutely crushed when they moved away from there when he was older in life, like in his early teen years, and he never got over that. And he said he would have dreams about going back and playing in the yard and being in the house. And I think it was almost like a tulpa or something, that he was thinking about that and meditating on it so hard. It created something. Like one of my favorite stories to talk about is Walter Gibson, the guy that wrote the Shadow stories. He was very prolific, wrote hundreds of pulp novels and radio scripts and short stories and things. Well, in the apartment that he lived in there, people actually started seeing a guy in a heavy coat and a slouch hat with a red scarf around his neck, which is the Shadow, the character he created. And that was kind of what they decided, was that he put so much energy and emotion and thought into making this character in the book that it something took that energy and was able to make something out of it that appeared in this realm, if you will. Or
did that entity give him the idea to write the story?
Maybe it was already there and it was influencing him to, hey, write my story. Hey, make him do this. Hey, have him do this. I think he would do that. Who knows? But it's neat to think about.
Yeah, it is. And I had him tell that story because this is it right here. All three of us here, we've all been digging. I've been digging for 50 years. Kat, you've been digging for the amount of time you have, a long time. Steve, too. Yep. And we come to this conclusion that not everything can be put into a neat little file with a neat little label on it and then, file it away in our file cabinet of paranormal, because, whether it's a cryptid that seems to change over the years, or, a Bigfoot, is he spiritual? Is he a missing link? Is he part of nature? Is he more than one thing? Who knows? Or the ghosts, are they angry, or are they just misunderstood? Are they an imprint of a little boy who loved a home? Is it a tulpa that we've created with our own energy, or a spirit that's putting the thoughts into our head to write the story or to have the dreams? And it's absolutely just that subject where it's constantly got a moving target, and it's always going to intrigue minds like ours and the listeners that are listening to this podcast tonight. And I cannot thank you guys enough for coming on. And, Kat, please tell us where we can find you. And Paranormal Heart is the last Sunday of every month, correct?
Yes, it is.
And
I usually release it at about 6 p.m. Eastern. Well, the main place that I release it is on Podbean. Just look for Paranormal Heart. But I'm also on YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, now on radio and podcast. just like yourself.
Uh-huh.
And every Sunday, I'm also on iamdarkwaters.com. Dark Waters was gracious enough to give my show a home.
Nice.
And it's every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And he plays my show because mine is a monthly show. So he'll play my show every Sunday until there's a new episode.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Oh, and I want to mention, if anybody is listening to this, my last episode with Ron Murphy, there's also a contest on that episode. So if you're interested, I'm not going to tell you what the contest prize is. You'll have to listen to the show.
Great. Oh, that's wonderful. Mystery to go with all this great intrigue. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yes. Well, we'll all listen. And Steve, you've got a lot going on with you too. What's going on with you?
Yeah, well, in addition to my books, which you can find on Amazon as always, I'm on Twitter and Instagram as well. I've started a YouTube channel, 13 Past Midnight, and at this point, it's me narrating stories from my books. It's kind of given those a new life. And coming up, I've got some unreleased stories that are going to be in future books that I'm going to narrate first instead of the other way around. So 13 Past Midnight, look for me on YouTube. I just started the channel February 11th, so it's very new, very fledgling, and I'd love to have people come and check it out.
I have to jump in there because you and I were talking today, and we didn't know each other had YouTube channels.
Yeah.
And I love the way you tell a story. I was listening to that story today on your YouTube channel, and I really love how you tell a story. It's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's really good. It's brand new, and I love it. And I hope to be collaborating with him a little bit. He's got some. I don't know whether you're going to start doing like a theater of the mind kind of thing where you're going to bring
sort
in
of. I did that at first a little bit. I put some sound effects in there, but in a way it kind of detracted from it. I'd rather just tell the stories. Right. The other day I had Shannon LeGros from Into the Fray Radio guest narrate a story for me. That turned out really well because I've got some stories from other people where it's just better with a female narrator. Right. You know, I feel silly saying, when I was a little girl, like I hear other narrators do it, but I wanted to extend that offer to you too. If either one of you would like to narrate a story on my channel, then you'll be more than welcome.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it. We'd love it. And absolutely check both of them out. And they're both also on my Journey Through the Gatekeepers page on Facebook. So if you'd love to talk to these guys again or ask them questions, please pop in there. And I cannot thank you guys enough for coming in and spending this time with us on this side of the gate tonight.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. I've been waiting so long to speak to Kat, so it's a treat for me.
It was a treat.
We messaged back and forth for probably over a year, but this is the first time we've talked to each other in person.
And it was great.
Yes, it really was. It was good to hear things from over in Canada too. It was nice to hear a little bit about the cryptids and things that you have there, and I'm going to look more into those. And I know Steve is going to be doing that tonight, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I've already got a list made up here while we were talking. I was taking notes.
Fantastic. Well, you guys have a wonderful evening in this Journey Through the Gate. It's been a lovely walk with both of you. Thank you both for coming on tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you, Cisco.
Thank you guys so much for sticking with us. We are up to, I think it's episode 43, and it has been a roller coaster ride. I've met so many wonderful people and heard fantastic stories, and we really started digging into a lot of these questions from real experiencers and people investigating the paranormal, and we really all are investigators of the paranormal. And I don't know if we'll ever get answers, but we can be more comfortable with the theories that we come across, or the ones that we had, or they change completely. That's just the way this subject is. So I'm going to keep digging if you're going to keep listening. And we've changed up some things. We have added on the Mallard Report. Jim Mallard has started another network. It is radioandpodcasts.com. And actually, Kat Ward is over there with me, Paranormal Heart. You'll find that there, along with Justin Cancellari's Beyond Reason, and the Nobu Boomy with Brian Bowden. And you'll find a lot of great podcasts over there, and they're adding more all the time. We are starting our own YouTube channel. I don't know if Conflict Radio is going to stay in the game. If they are, then we'll be found there as well. A lot of things changing on YouTube, monetizing and what you can have and what you can't. And so a lot of the channels are changing. A lot of this, we're coming out with our own. Steve and I are going to do a YouTube channel. And don't forget, Kat's YouTube channel is Paranormal Heart. You'll find it on her YouTube channel. And you'll also find the 13 o'clock. You'll find that on Steve's YouTube channel. So we're going to see if we can't get one of our own out there. Plus, you can always catch me on the Libsyn and over there on radio and podcast. So thank you so much for sticking with me. There's been a lot of stuff, a lot of shifting in the home base here in our little paranormal bunker. And, I'm trying to get it, I was trying to get at least 1 or 2 episodes a week out to you. And now some job changes and things like that. So we're going to try to do it at least twice a month. Trying to get them out there on Sundays. Doesn't always happen. We've had to change up some equipment and some things. But I thank you so much for sticking with. Now, don't forget, we've got the Facebook Gatekeepers page. I'm also thinking about getting another page out there, but I won't, say that right now, just in case it doesn't happen. Don't forget, we've got tpublic.com. We've got a lot of our cover art there, and you've got like crispy mugs and crispy pillows and t-shirts and hoodies. Over the head and zipper up front is fantastic. All kinds of stickers. I actually saw a crispy sticker at a Bubba Coos the other day. It was awesome. Little Crispy was getting down with some Bubba Coos. Man, that was great food, by the way. That is an unpaid advertisement. But if you've not been to Bubba Coos, get down there and try it. It's fantastic. Their quesadillas and tacos are absolutely wonderful. And apparently Crispy likes them too, because when I got there he was. So there's that. And we're going to keep trying to get you good people on here to ask questions of. If you get in the Gatekeepers page, it's Journey Through the Gate, Paranormal Portal Podcast Gatekeepers on Facebook. If we announce guests ahead of time, you can always put your questions in there. You can email them to me at journeythroughthegate@gmail.com. And if you have stories, please do that and send the stories in. I'm still compiling a listener's stories. What happens is I get everything recorded, and then I hear something from one of the listeners, and I say, you know what? Why don't you just come on and tell the story? So then I have to go back and edit that out because they've been a guest. So we're getting it together. I'm having fun, and I send you all my love, and just keep asking questions, and just keep that sense of wonder, because it is a wonderful subject full of miracles. It's got a lot of scary things in there too, and a lot of head scratching stuff. But we're pulling quite a good information out of a lot of these experiencers and paranormal investigators, and just people just like us who just want to know what's going on. And it's fun, and I'm having a blast, and I'm so glad you're here for the ride with me. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in the can and get it out to you, and I thank you for your patience through this trying couple months that just went on. And we're back, and we're doing pretty good, and I'm excited, and I'm excited to share it all with you. So thanks so much, and don't forget, you keep your feet under those covers and keep your closet door shut, because there are things that go bump.